All right, welcome on in everyone to another episode of First CSP, the channel dedicated to bringing you the first council shoulder patch issued from each council in Scouting America, both past and present. Today we're going to take a look at Pacific Skyline 31 out of California. This council was originally formed in 1994 as the merger of San Mateo County and Stanford area councils. Originally, in the early collecting guides, this was divided into three variants for the first issue. You had the S1A, the S1B, and the S1C. We have a couple of those to take a look at today. If you looked at a more recent collecting guide, they have merged all of those together to just be S1 with minor variations. They do not list varieties of A, B, and C anymore. But let's take a look at some of those older classifications. On the patch table here, starting off, we have the S1, formerly known as S1A, with its black border, orange, light orange. They list pre-woven coarse sky, yellow fleur-de-lis, and 6mm black letters. It is the 6mm taller letters that are specific for the S1A here. So if you measure these are going to be 6mm top to bottom. The other defining characteristic for the S1A and S1B is this more coarse central sky background. We're going to look at some S1Cs and you'll be able to see the difference between the two. We don't happen to have an S1B. The S1B looks like this with the coarse background, but the letters are 5mm. Also, all of the examples we have for S1C are also 5mm. So you'll be able to see the slightly smaller text in some of the patches we'll put up head to head here in just a moment. But again, here on the S1A, it's defined by the coarse central background, which was the defining characteristic for both the S1A and B. They had the coarse pre-woven background. And then the A has 6mm tall letters. The B has 5mm tall letters. You can take a look at the back here. This is a plastic back. You can see it does use clear lock stitching. I believe all of these are using clear lock stitching, so not a particularly defining characteristic there. So that is the S1A. And the S1B looks very similar except has 5mm letters for the text. Now let's look at some S1Cs, and there were multiple production runs that we have here for S1Cs. Here's one of them. So here you can see these head to head. The S1Cs have much finer stitching on the central back, and you don't see this coarse central. And that's the difference between what you're going to see as S1A and B and S1C in the older designations. Again, all of these would just be S1s now. So we actually have three different S1Cs to take a look at. They're all going to have the much tighter stitching in the center here, and what we're going to find are some differences are the color of green for this grass and the fonts for California being a little thicker, being a little thinner. I'm actually going to show them to you in the order of this is the thickest California text we're going to see, and we're going to see that font thin out over subsequent examples. Also, you're going to find slight differences in the how pointed the fleur-de-lis is, as well as its position to the top of the mountain there. It's also important not to get the S1s confused with the S6. I don't happen to have an S6 here, but the S6 looks just like this, except this mountain bit over on the right is now water. So it's like they continue the water all the way across. This mountain part is gone and it's replaced with water. That is not an S1, that would be an S6. All right, I'm going to take off the S1A so we can put a couple of these S1Cs together head to head. So you can see this is a very thick California. We get a lighter green. Here we get a thin California over a slightly darker shade of green. We get a bit more rounded top of the fleur-de-lis. It also is a little further down from the top of the mountain. See the lettering here looks thinner compared to this one. All of these letterings though, however, top to bottom, despite the thickness of the letter stitching, would be that 5mm. They are smaller. You can kind of put it next to it. So you can see we do get slightly taller stitching on the S1A. This is the 6 millimeter. These would all be 5 millimeters, just like the S1B would also be 5 millimeters. We've got one more S1C to take a look at. Just kind of set it over here on the bottom. This one, the California, is kind of in between these two. Set it off to the side. So you can see this one is the thickest. These two have very similar greens. This is the lightest of the greens. Here we have the thickest letters. It gets a little bit thinner. This is the thinnest. All of these would be considered S1Cs. The backs of these all look fairly similar as well. These are all just pretty flat pressed clear plastic backs. We get some slight color variations through the backing, but nothing so much as that I would tell you that you know exactly which production run you're dealing with on any of these. And all of these just would have formerly been S1Cs, but are also still just S1s now. Move these up a little bit. Went through collecting a lot of these to try and figure out which ones were the first. And we finally identified that rough coarse text as the differentiator for the difference between what was previously known as S1A, B, and C. Again, you can see the differences in the font stitching, and these are just multiple production runs. But anything that didn't have that coarse central part would have been an S1C. So we have like 3 production runs on the S1C here. We'll put back up the S1A that we have. Again, with the coarse central stitching and the tall letters. So those are the first issues. Hopefully that helps you with some identification. Again, nowadays everything would just be considered an S1. And if you're just looking at more recent guides and concerned with differentiating any of the S1s to the S6, you don't want water on the far right side of the patch. That's an S6. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. We'll be back again tomorrow with another brand new episode of First CSP. If you're enjoying the content, feel free to like, subscribe, and share it with others. We certainly appreciate that. If you know more about any of these councils or the CSPs and their origin stories, feel free to drop it in the comments. We always have some great collectors adding some insightful information about the histories of the councils or the CSPs themselves. So it's always cool to check out and learn from the comments below. With that, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you for stopping in, and we'll catch you on the next episode tomorrow.